Hey, this is Kyle Crawford from Strong Dads. Strong Dads podcast would love to thank the Crimers Beer House for coming alongside of us. The Crimers Beer House was started in 1982 by the Crimer family, and since that time, they have definitely become a Cincinnati favorite. So if you're looking for an incredible meal in an incredible setting, definitely go down to Route 128 and check out the Crimers Beer House. Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to another show. Strong Dads here. We are in a different studio today.
This place is terrible. Where'd you get this place?
I tell you what, we got the Rock Solid Family logo back here, which is good. It'll be a segue. You can continue to put a plug in for yours and Linda.
This is the ministry right here.
There it is.
So just so everybody understands why we're here, like if you happen to catch the latest Rock Solid radio show, you know that we were up in our office recording, and so that's where Kyle and I are today.
That was a tongue twister.
That was mostly because our house is torn apart right now where our studio is, and so it's in shambles with just getting a lot of project stuff done. And we could have recorded there today actually because the studio part's all set up, but there's guys right above the studio pounding away, and I was like, nah, probably wouldn't be good. So we are in a very echoey location, but hey, we're going to make this work.
I like it.
And we are not going to quit throwing a show.
So today we got to give Merle lots of grace. His life has been flipped upside down. He's currently living in hoarder conditions.
You should see it. Oh my gosh. I'm just looking for a pair of underwear. Where's my underwear?
Well, good deal. Yeah, I mean, I hope you guys are having a good week out there. We're excited to be back with you. We're going to continue, the last couple of shows minus our Super Bowl show. We've been talking a little bit about work and just really feel like a lot of guys out there, whether it's maybe a struggle with work or whether they're struggling to really kind of find that value in their work, which is we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. Well, it's a huge part of our waking hours, 8+ hours a day or what have you. And so if you're in that place that long, good or bad, it's going to impact you.
Yeah.
And I think part of our job is to understand, well, how do we impact work well, but how do we allow work to impact us?
Yeah.
And if we don't get a grip on that, it'll trickle out into so many other places in our life. So it is an important topic. And you know what? You might be doing a great job of it, but you may not be. So let's just see where you're at, and let's walk through the conversation.
I like it. Yeah, before we do, let's get into our sponsors real fast. Strong Dads, we'd like to thank the Crimers Beer House for coming alongside of us. Really do appreciate Mark and the Crimers Beer House. We really greatly appreciate them. It allows us to continue to do what we do. So go down there on Route 128, check them out. Great environment, great food. So awesome.
All right. Yeah, let's also thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions, as Casey is starting to fire up. I remember saying that last year about this time of year as we're slowly here approaching March, that starting to fire up with some landscape type stuff. And so for all your landscape needs, and all of your gift needs. I mean, they have an incredible gift shop down there at Casey's. Yeah. Go down and see Casey at Casey's Outdoor Solutions, located outside of Lawrenceburg, Indiana.
Good deal.
All right. So what do you got here today?
So, just like you were saying, the idea of work and how, it does take up a large portion of our day. For here in America, we fall into the 40-hour work week, and some of you guys may not fit you. You may be into the 50 or 60-hour work week, right? So when you start to look at that, I think, we've made a lot of mentions before on the show, this idea of, same day, different, different day, same stuff. Right. And this idea that sometimes we just fall in this rut. And I think this idea of work, especially the 5 days a week, if that's where you find yourself, man, it's like I wake up, I go to work, I get off of work, I come home, if you have kids, it's doing homework, eating dinner, preparing myself for the next day, going to bed, and then just repeat. And it's hard because I think a lot of guys get stuck in this rut of just like, what is my purpose? Why am I even going to work? Is it strictly for a paycheck? Unfortunately, I really do feel like in America we have fallen, generally speaking, have fallen into this rut where we almost feel like that is our sole purpose, is to just provide a paycheck, right? Mm-hmm. And don't get me wrong, having the financial stability of work is very, very important, especially if you're raising a family. Like, I don't want to discredit the idea of making money, but man, there's got to be more to work than making money, because the flavor of the money is gonna not taste very good after a while, right? It's gonna lose its excitement that you're making XYZ amount of money. So, this idea of finding value in our work, I think it is very, very important because hopefully the value aspect of your work will be a long-term venture, more so than just the excitement of making the money.
You have to put value in something, and so if you can't put value in your work, then you're going to look for other things.
Yeah,
And
very true.
I could go to our little churchy worldview and say all the right things, like, well, we're supposed to put our value in our family and in God and our marriage,
Sure.
which is all true. It's all true, but men strive for even more value than that. In other words, those other hours of the day, like
Yeah.
they have to be able to feel like what they're doing is valuable. And so what I see all the time is guys, if they can't value work, okay, it's just a paycheck, then they'll start to value what the paycheck does, right? And so this is where, hey, it'll buy me some cars, it'll buy me some hunting trips, it'll buy
Yep.
me some new guns. And so I really start putting more value in the money part of it,
Yeah.
because that's what's feeding me. So, and again, we're not here to condemn any of that. This is all kind of a balance of what we value and then prioritize. And if the job's totally empty, well, at least I make a lot of money so I can go out and buy toys.
Yeah.
And then the problem with that is, when do the toys become empty
Yep.
and that type of thing.
As we jump into this conversation, I want to start it off by saying, man, this idea of value, I truly do think men should have value in their work. But the caveat to that is, man, as believers in Christ, we are called to, our ultimate value does not come from our work. And this is a hard balance for a lot of men, because I truly do think men want to work and want to have value in their work. But the problem is when you place all of your value and all of your worth in your work, because what that does is one day you're going to retire, or one day that job may not be there. And if your sole purpose, that you think your sole purpose in this world is to work and provide in a sense of a financial aspect, man, I think we really are missing what God created us to be. So I just want to put a preface to everything we're going to talk about today, in the sense of your true value and what you find value in should come from Christ and should come from who you're created to be. But man, I think in that, we were created to have value in the work in which we do.
Yeah. Well, I think about that as you're saying that, like people who put an abundant amount of value in work, when the work changes or stops. So think of pro athletes.
Sure.
I mean, they actually have transition programs. Military, they have transition programs now to help these guys, because maybe that was their world. Like, man, playing football or being in the military, as a career guy, that was my world. And there's a lot of value in that, right? Especially if you're made for it, if you love it, if it pays well, all these things.
Sure.
And then the next thing you know, that world stops. And these guys really can be challenged in terms of how they're going to transition. Like, well, what am I going to do with my day? Well, now what is my purpose? And I think you're right. Like that whole idea, I have to understand. We talk about this in relationships all the time. The understanding or the hierarchy of my value system. God first. And so, what is the value of God? Well, God created me for a purpose, right? And so I have to always know, like, listen, whether I'm building homes, working on cars, or fixing people in the ER, all of those are just things I do, but who do I do them for?
Sure.
Right? Like that value. And that's a change in mindset, because sometimes when you think you're serving people, when they don't respond well, it's frustrating. I mean,
yeah.
I will tell you personally, in the business that I'm in now of coaching people,
Sure.
There's sessions where I feel like I'm more passionate than the people I'm working with. I'm like, come on, dude, you got this, you can do this. And then they walk out and they do the same garbage that they came in doing 5 minutes after they walk out the door. And I just really, what good is the work I'm doing?
Sure.
And so again, remember, I'm not working just for that guy. I'm working for God here.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I mean, speaking of yours and Linda's ministry with Rock Solid Family, like, can you when we talk about this idea of value, I think a starting place for us is to kind of share our current experience, our past experience when it comes to work. Like, when it comes to this idea of value, you came from the school world and the counseling and the teaching world, and obviously now with you and Linda, doing the coaching now. Like, what type of value do you find in the work you've done in the school and then now in this world?
Well, I'll share my superficial, my shallowness. So I would like to be able to tell you that when I worked in the schools that I was completely fulfilled.
Sure.
All right. Like, I just love teaching and I just loved counseling. And I did really like those things. But I also, and I think this might be more towards the male wiring, like, I could never tell what I did in a day. Mm-hmm. I never had an end product. And that would frustrate me, and people will say, you're just teaching kids, you're teaching the future, and all that sounds good. But for me, it was sometimes really difficult to not walk away and see a product, to see some level of achievement. And for that reason, I have always, all my adult life, I have always done things that I could measure through the course of my day or my week that just kept me in touch with achievement. So everything from building projects, right? Like, that's kind of what we were talking about. I don't know, at the end of the day, I love looking at a wall that I built and go, man, this morning when I started, there was nothing there. Now, look what I accomplished. So I see a value in it.
Okay.
So that's been that's just been a big challenge in my world. When you work with people, it's not always very easy to measure. And it certainly isn't an instant gratification thing. Like, instant gratification can be, I build the wall, and at the end of the day, boom, look what I've got. Whereas when you work with people, I can think of how frustrated probably Christ got at times when he was like, I've been talking to these people forever, and they just don't get it. The idea here of letting people have their own will and you being patient with it, that's been a challenge for me. I know I'm supposed to understand that, but I don't always. And so sometimes I just need to get away from the coaching aspect, and I have to go build something, or I have to go hop on a bike and ride extremely hard and go, I wonder if I can beat yesterday's time, that kind of thing. So that's kind of my deal. Like, I still feel a very strong connection to measure some of my outcomes to see how valuable. And I'm not saying that that's always the right way. I'm just telling you that I feel a desire to do that.
Well, I do think that as you're speaking, my mind's just kind of running, and I start to put myself in my world, in the fire world. That's this idea of measuring is something that I can relate to that absolutely. I've shared quite a bit on this show before. The EMS side of my job is not exactly doesn't fulfill me the way that the fire side does. I love the fire aspect of the job that I do, but man, when I look at runs that we make on these patients, I can actually measure the procedures in which I'm doing for these patients. So we'll come up on somebody who's a diabetic and they're unconscious and their sugar is our meter's reading low, which means it's like 20 or 30, right? And I can actually give them, start an IV and give them a medicine and have them come out of it.
Yeah.
And so when you want to talk about measuring that, although I don't enjoy the aspect of the EMS world, but man, it's right there in front of me, right? And so when it comes to my job and finding value, I never even thought of it in that sense that you were talking about, finding the actual measuring the work in which you're doing, because a lot of times for us, inside of a fire, you want to measure value and measure the product you're putting out. I mean, we destroy people's houses.
Right.
And the reason we're doing it is because we need to make sure the fire doesn't destroy it. But we'll dump hundreds and thousands of gallons of water in these houses. And anybody who's ever had a water leak knows that that's not a good thing, right? It destroys everything it touches.
So I'm thinking about that for a second. So you guys, when you put out a fire, let's just say we've got a good blazing fire going here. Okay, you're sick, man. And the idea there, you guys, whatever, you're going to, because of all the water, because of all the holes you're cutting in walls, because of all this, you're going to maybe destroy 50 or 60% of that house. Versus the fire, if you just sat back, the fire would destroy 95% of that house, right? Yep. So even though, just so that you guys out there listening, you say you destroyed the home, you're actually saving
Yes.
percentage of the home
Yes.
that hopefully will be salvageable.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, in the fire service, in my world, everything we do, there's a purpose behind it. So a lot of times we do have to, cut holes in walls to see if there's extensions, see if that fire is inside the walls. Like if there's a wall there, I can't see past that wall, so I have to cut that wall down to see if there's embers in there that are going to catch the insulation on fire, and then
Right.
then 3 hours later, we're gonna have a rekindle. It's gonna catch back on fire, and then like you said,
Yeah.
that fire is gonna destroy 100% of that house.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what fire wants to do. It wants to destroy everything. I mean, there's a reason why we have to go in there and we have to ensure that it is put out. So, but yeah, I really do like that idea. What you're talking about, Merle, the idea of actually having a measurable tool associated with your work, because it's so maybe it's the simplicity mind of a man that we need to see our work and need to see what it's doing, and finding value in that.
The coach that we work with, so we not only coach people, but we also get coached. And one of his phrases all the time is a reminder to us is what's measured will move. In other words, if you can measure it, then you can move that. And if it doesn't, if you like, well, I don't know, it just feels like things were better today, there's nothing there to motivate movement or change. And so that idea, like, how do I start to measure, like, the things that are important? And so we could take that right into your job. Like, sometimes some of you guys are out there are very much in a measurable job. Maybe you're in sales and you have sales goals, and those are very measurable. But what about you guys who do not have that sort of system set up, right? How would you set up a measurement system so that you would feel more like, hey, I am getting something done today?
Yeah, that's a good point. And as we kind of move into this conversation, Merle, you had made reference to this, man. I think if you are struggling with finding value in your work and what you're doing, whether it's because you can't actually put a measuring tool next to it, or whether you feel like you're just working for the man and you're not actually being fulfilled from your job. Again, going back to that point I made before, like, our ultimate fulfillment doesn't come from our work, but I think I do think men need to find value and fulfillment in their job. But man, just like you said before, Merle, when that is lacking in your life, man, your overall personality, your overall morale in your personal life is drastically affected, and then that trickles into your marriage, and then it can really affect your marriage, and then the way in which you're raising your kids. So again, not to say that it's the end all be all what your work is, but if we're struggling to find true value in our job, I do think it trickles into our personal life.
There's just no doubt that it does, and I think where I get to see that is I get to coach a lot of men who are in their late 50s and 60s and even 70s, and by then they've actually fleshed out the whole, well, I had all the money, well, I had the girls, well, I had the power and the job position. So by then they've had an opportunity to actually try to invest in things they thought were valuable, and then it comes back and they can actually tell me, well, that didn't produce much. Okay, so I've said that many times before. There's no such thing as an arrogant old man, and that's another reason why. Like, when you put value in things that tend to not be overly valuable, you become frustrated, and so when you become frustrated, it does leak into your other areas. So then you turn into that grumpy old man. All right. So now no one's happy. You're grumpy around the house. So that whole idea of, then how do I find value in my work? How do I find value in all the things that I do? And frankly, if I'm spending a considerable amount of time in something that I'm no longer feeling valuable, I either need to change what my value system is, because maybe I'm valuing the wrong things.
Yeah, that's true.
I've got my priorities mixed up, or it's time for a change in what I'm doing. All right. So we're looking at really two things here: the value system. Do you have a faulty value system? All right. Or are you spending time in the things that just are not going to ever reach your value system?
Yeah. So let's jump into that value system, and I started compiling this list. I started to look at my job, where I do find a lot of value in what I do, and started to look at the different aspects of my job the parts of my job that I do find the value in, and it fulfills me. And I started just jotting these down. And if you don't actually if you can't relate to some of these, maybe just what you're saying, Merle, maybe, again, not that these are the end-all be-all, but maybe there is something here. Maybe these are things that you're overlooking and not finding value in, that if you were to take a step back and maybe look at them a different light, maybe you will begin to find value. So, the first one that I wrote down was, does your job give you or have some form of accountability? Man, this one is huge for me. This is something in the last probably 4 to 5 years of my career in the fire service. There's myself and another guy that I know I've talked about him before. His name's Joey. I work with him every day. And man, I tell you what, the accountability that I have with him when we go on a fire, and we'll come back and we'll talk about that fire. Hey, what are some of the things we could have done different? Because I've talked before, I want to be the best fireman that I can be in every aspect of the job that I do. And man, having someone that can hold me accountable, because I don't know about you guys, there's some days I'm just not feeling it, right? There's some days I just come into work, it's just like, golly, I just don't want to be here right now, right? But to have someone else there to say, hey, let's go.
Right.
I'll pick up where you're falling short today, and to have someone else that I can work alongside of, that I can feed off of, that I can go to multiple trainings a year. It's like, hey man, that last fire we had, we were struggling to force that door open. Let's go to a forcible entry training, and let's learn some new things. Let's get better at that. And then that trickled into us teaching. Now we're teaching a lot. We're going around and doing different trainings. We are now the ones that are showing different firefighters that are struggling with different parts of the fire service. So man, I think accountability, if you have that and you don't find value in it, maybe again, let's go back to that value system. There is something there. Yeah. I mean, you and Linda, obviously you guys kind of have an accountability with each other with your ministry currently.
Yeah. Well, let's pull out really what you're doing there. Okay. So the important part here, the accountability, but I want to drive back to the idea of, you have placed a value on your partner.
Yeah.
Okay? And so if I don't place value in the people who I'm supposed to be working with, then I don't really care if I tick them off. I don't really care if I disappoint them. And you're talking about Big Joey here, and the idea, like you've talked to me about him before, like you really respect this guy.
Yep.
All right? You respect this guy, and at the end of the day, it's not just about doing fires. It's like, no, I want Joey to respect me.
Yeah.
And so this is a value that you're having with Joey.
Yep.
All right? It's not the work. It's not the work at all. That's what you happen to do. You happen to value him as a person and that relationship that you have with him. Okay? And I'll say that because let's just say you got on a crew and you happen to be linked up with a guy that maybe you had some history where the two of you don't like each other.
Sure.
Okay? Now, in order for you to do a good job, you don't care much for him. Okay? You're going to have to find, okay, listen, I still need to do a good job because I value the homeowner or I value my reputation. All right? I'm going to, like this guy, listen, he's a knucklehead. I don't really care for him. All right? So I don't have the relationship of accountability to him. I'm going to have to find what other thing that I value that holds me accountable. So that whole thing with Joey you talk about, that's not so much about the work as it is the relationship.
Yep. That's I like it. Does your job give you the ability to have a positive impact or a negative impact on other people? This is something outside looking in. The cliche, whenever you ask somebody like, why'd you get in the fire service? It's always like, well, I wanted to help people. Right? That's always like the cliche answer. I get the opportunity to speak into and be a part of countless people's lives every day I go into work because of EMS runs, because we go on a lot of EMS runs every day. And sometimes I overlook the significance in that. And sometimes I'm really like, all right, like this person actually needs me here. Right. I actually have a job to do. So, man, when it comes to the idea of value and finding value in your job, I think if you have the ability to have a positive impact on someone's life, man, there's no way, there's no value in that, because if you are changing someone's life, if you are speaking into them, if you're just, I think there's a lot to be said about being, bold and being honest and firm with people. Like, people need to hear truth because this world is full of lies. Mm-hmm. So if you have the ability to speak truth to someone's life, man, I think there's value in that. So does your job give you the ability to speak and impact people's life? I think there's definitely value in that.
No, there's no doubt. Like, the idea here of us looking at what we do, are we building others up? So rather than just figuring out whether I'm being built up, right? Is what I'm doing going to have a positive impact on somebody else or a negative impact? I think that was the big thing that kept my head in the game for so long in the school business. Okay. Like, at the end of the day, I had to believe that I was setting people in a positive environment and hopefully a positive trajectory in their life. And that can be hard sometimes when you're working with a kid who's maybe he's a little rascal and he's, and maybe the parents aren't cooperative. Like, that makes it really difficult. But hey, I got mom and dad are kind of a pain in my butt side, but this kid, I'm still trying. I'm not going to just give up on this kid. I'm going to continue to try. So that's a great point about, like, hey, how am I going to impact someone else?
Yep. This next one, this is something that was ingrained in me from the very first day that I got hired at the Dayton Fire Department in the academy. Does your job care about the small details? This is big for me. When I get an assignment to go search a room, that room's on fire and we have a potential of someone's trapped. The small details to me are, okay, I feel a bed. I'm actually going to jump on this bed and I'm going to feel around. Oh, that
sounds like a little gross.
Well, if there's someone there, you want me on top of that bed to find them, right?
Because it's completely dark, or
you have zero visibility. So when I come up to a closet, statistics would show you realistically people probably aren't going to be in a closet, but the small detail is, did I search that room? Did I make sure that closet was clear? Because when I come out of that room, my captain is going to say, hey, Kyle, all clear in that room? And if I miss those small details, to me, those small details are huge. They mean so much. And I find a lot of value in knowing I can put my head on my pillow at the end of the night. I know I searched that room. Now, whether or not there was someone found in that house later on, I know in my heart I did everything I could to make sure that room was clear, or whatever the case may be for you. But I think there's so much good that can come from actually you yourself finding value in those small details.
Man, so this one kind of smacks me in the face because I struggle to see details. In my life, I'm more of a big picture person. I see direction, I see vision, I can see all that. But that detail stuff just makes me get all muddy, like, I don't want it. But you're right, because the detail has busted my chops more than a few times. And so as I've gotten older, I have gotten better. I just had a conversation with my son about this. So I'll go back to a project I was doing.
Drywall. I'm thinking drywall.
Drywall, no. I hate drywall. But the floor that I was talking about, and there were a few places there that you and I looked at, and you're like, well, I don't know. And I'm like, oh, Kyle, don't even tell me I have to tear that thing back up. And I kind of knew in my heart. And I did. I went back and I tore it all back up. Yeah. Thanks, Kyle, for putting pressure on me. And I was like, once I made the decision to just tear it up, I was like, okay, this is what I'm doing. But my son got into a little bit of, I'll say, difficulty at school with some grade things. Mm-hmm. And it's not like he's lacking the smarts to do it. But he's a big picture guy. Yeah. He sees an amazing future in his life. But all this little stuff like homework is getting in the way. And so we had this conversation where I was just like, dude, I understand you completely. Yeah. I get it. My brain works a lot like yours does. But the idea here of you just blowing over your homework and turning stuff in when it's not done well or done right is coming back to bite you. And now the things that you say you love, you don't get to do because of that detail stuff that you keep blowing through. And so, as an adult, it was a good teaching lesson that I could explain to him how I've been burnt, but listen, I'm redoing this now so that I don't have to pay for it later.
Yep, that's good stuff. You know, this next one I wrote down. This is something that's again from the outside looking in, you wouldn't think that the fire service is full of this, but it really is. Is your job focused on deadlines at all costs? So before everything else, you have to get this memo in. You have to get you ready for this meeting, and that could be hard because when it comes to the small details. And this feeds into the next point that I was going to make, this idea of does your job have similar morals and ethics that you do? Because if your job is so focused on deadlines at all costs, right? If your job that you currently have doesn't have a similar moral and ethics that you hold yourself to in your personal life, that's where the lying, and I'll just fudge these numbers to put forth a product that my boss will be happy with. So when it comes to this idea of deadlines, and the reason I say that about the fire service, we do have a deadline, and it's called the fire, right? If I don't get in there and get it done fast, that fire's going to lick my chops real quick, right? So although it may be in some aspects, I think this is where you have to find your own value system and ensure that your value system lines up with the place because if the place you work doesn't care about any values, they just want to see the end product, I think they're missing the small details, right? The small details in which to get to that end product. So if you work in a place where deadlines are the end all be all, man, are those value systems? Is your work value and your personal values? Do those two systems line up?
Man, Kyle, while you're talking, my head, I just want to blurt out with an experience. I wish I could say this was very rare, but this is a very common thing, and I'm probably going to step on some people's toes here. I can't tell you the number of times that I have a couple that come in. So we do premarital coaching as well to help get a couple ready. And they come in and they have already booked the church, got the preacher, got the reception, got the honeymoon. Oh, and the last thing, well, let's go get this premarital thing. Okay?
Yeah.
And so now I've got an artificial deadline. I've got an artificial deadline on how these two value each other, themselves, and this marriage. And so they come in and they say stuff. I'll say, okay, so when's the wedding? And they'll be like, well, it's in 2 weeks. All right, 2 weeks. So you're telling me that this person is so valuable that you can do all this work that we're getting ready to do. So we do a pre-assessment and everything. So and I mean, sometimes those things come in, and this couple, I'm not even sure they should be in the same room together. Okay, they can be that far off. And I'm not saying that they should or should not be married. I'm just saying, hey, we got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
Okay, and so the idea there that now when I put an artificial boundary or deadline or some target on there, that now makes me cheat. It makes me cheat to get it. And so, again, this is dangerous stuff.
Yeah.
So prior to getting married, let's make sure we value the same things. That way our marriage will be valuable.
Yeah.
If we don't do that, and that can be my job, that can be everything. Before I jump into something, do I see the value in it? And then I can start putting those deadlines on.
Yeah, that's really good. That's drawn from obviously your work experience. This next one, does your job work as a team? This is something, again, I have a group of guys that I work with every day. Man, I love those guys. I love going into work, hanging out with those guys, going on runs with those guys, doing life with those guys, right? Does your job give you the ability to work as a team? And if it doesn't, I'm not saying there's no value in that. I think there's a time and a place for that. But man, I think we were made to be with one another, right? And I think, golly, how awesome is it to accomplish a task with a team? You're like, woo, high fiving, we actually did this together.
Yeah.
And to me, this is something I get a great deal of value from working with the other guys, going on these runs, coming back, discussing them, talking, getting better as a crew. Because the old cliche of you're only as strong as your weakest link is so very true in most aspects, and for sure in the fire service. If we have a task at hand and I got a guy on my crew that's unable to do that task, or we currently have a new guy and we're trying to teach him all those things,
right?
We're unable to do the task that we want to do if he is not up to speed with us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
man, I think there's so much good and so much value that can come from if you find yourself in a job that has a team and you're a part of that team.
Man, so you're talking about relationships again, right? Like, I think hopefully you guys start to get the message here that all of our work is about who we are serving. And if we value the who that we are serving, we will find our work valuable. If we don't value, or for some reason our value system is messed up, and maybe it's only us that we value, we are going to start to find a lot of emptiness in these places. So one huge takeaway that hopefully you'll start to come out of this is, who does your job serve? Who are you serving in your job? No matter whether you're pouring concrete or you're working on cars or you're, like we said before, the doctor, it just doesn't matter. You have to know that the people you are serving are valuable and you want to do well by them. At that point, everything starts to take care of itself. It's amazing the crappy jobs, the actual physical or mental crappy jobs that you can do when you see the value in doing it, right? I mean, hey, listen, I'm putting fires out. Like, that's a pretty crappy job when you think of just the job, okay? The idea that I'm doing that for someone or with somebody, oh, yeah, let's go put the fire out.
And it made me think of that show, was it The Dirty Jobs? He would go out and do these was it Mark Rowe? Is that right?
Mike Rowe.
Mike Rowe, there we go.
Yeah.
He would go out and do these dirty jobs, and these guys are like, they're in the sewers and they're cleaning and they're like cutting up and having a good time. And like those guys, like they're, obviously the camera's on, so they could be putting a front up. But just what you were saying, like the relationships that you have with these people, because man, I'll tell you what, if you wanna really build a strong bond with somebody, go out and do something dirty.
Do a crappy job.
Go out and do a crappy job because, man, there's nothing like accomplishing a task and you get done and your hands are like this freaking mess, right? Yeah. And it's like, we did this together. So I think the relationship is if nothing else, if you're getting from this show, is relationships, because that's what God calls us to be. Again, going back to that very first point that I made, that, man, your ultimate value comes from who God created you to be, and God created us to be in relationships. And so when you're in a relationship, because naturally you do develop bonds and relationships with the people you work with, man, those relationships, find value in those if nothing else.
The big takeaway, guys, quality and value in our work is going to be coming from what we see in the people we're serving, whether it's the guys we're working with or whether it's the family we're working for, or ultimately we're trying to please God. This is all about relationships. If you are empty in your work, if you're wondering why, I'd first ask you to look at, who are you serving, all right? What is the relationship that's not being fed well here? Because that's where this boils down to.
I like it.
All right.
Good deal.
So what do you think?
I like it. I'm ready to go to work. I'm actually, all my guys are on today, so I'm on EDO week, so.
Yeah, I'm sure they just love when you rub that in.
Well, they get EDO too.
Yeah. All right. So, guys, we want to thank you for listening. Hopefully, a big takeaway here, we got to value people, right? That's because we want people to value us. Yeah. And especially as men, like, I want to feel respected by other men. I want to be able to pour into men, as well as I want them to be able to pour into me. So this comes back to a human connection, as Kyle was talking about. All right. Hey, if there's anything that we can do to help you, reach out to us at Rock Solid Families and see what we can do to set up either a coaching appointment or even a marriage coaching appointment, maybe even parenting, all right? Yep. We want to do these things well because these are people that we claim to value, so let's do it well. You can get us at 812-576-7625. Go on our website, if you like, at rocksolidfamilies.org and just see what we're up to. Lots of stuff going on there with our marriage, our Rock Solid Marriage course that we're getting ready to launch. Got a lot of stuff going on. We're even redoing homes right now. Like, this is just crazy.
You're a busy man.
Busy.
It is, man. Yep. We really do appreciate you guys. Thanks so much to Kramer's Beer House, Casey's Outdoor Solutions. Come alongside of us. Greatly do appreciate them. Check them out to let them know we sent you down there. We're looking forward to share the heck out of these shows. Looking forward to putting more shows out for you guys. Go out there and be some strong dads.
So do you value our friendship?
I do. Greatly.
All right, so will you come back and help me reinstall doors when we get
Let's
back?
do it.
Oh, all right.
Full send.
Good job.
Casey's is a premier garden center and gift shop located in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Casey's offers a wide selection of plants, landscaping materials, home and garden decor, and gifts for every occasion. Casey's is committed to providing exceptional service, a unique shopping experience, and value to every customer. Stop in and see what makes Casey's so unique. Located at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana, or call 812-537-3800. Let Casey's help you add beauty to your home.